Hello, everyone. Josh Weber here with Big Red Jelly. I am here with Steven Sobisky.
That's correct, Sobisky.
Sobisky, there we go. Steven is brand new here at Big Red Jelly, and we are very excited to have him with us. He comes joining our creative team with decades of experience in the creative field. So the whole purpose here is for everyone to get to know Steven just a little bit better. We're excited. I think he's excited.
I'm very excited.
And we're going to jump in and ask Steven some questions. And maybe we can just start with your background in the creative field. Where did it all begin? Give us a little bit of an overview.
My creative field began when I was 7 years old, actually, when I saw Star Wars in 1977.
Okay.
And I realized that is what I wanted to do for a living.
Wow.
As a kid, is I wanted to be an animator. So from there, in about 1990, I started designing sets for movies. So I was kind of an architect guy, and I kind of enjoyed it quite a bit. And then from there, I went on to school to go and become a graphic design commercial art major and architect, leaning more towards the graphic design side. And then went in and got a degree in technological management, which then led me into the day I graduated, got a job at PDI DreamWorks. And so that's where my true film career started, as a project manager on almost 100 feature films and TV shows over the past 35 years.
I actually did not know that you started as a set designer.
Set designer, yeah.
So very physical design. You were building sets.
My first set was for a 20-minute Japanese commercial. It was a smell-o-vision commercial. So so when they crashed in the fruit stands, you smelt the fruit as you're watching the screen. So it's kind of fun.
So when you started doing set design, at what point did that transition, you said, into, was it graphic design next, or was it video? What was that transition?
It went from, because I was a designer for architecture, first and foremost. But you also have to kind of concept a lot of stuff, design stuff back then. And so I kind of got into the world of looking at 3D modeling. And which was very new at that time. And when I did, I found a company here locally in Utah when I moved from California to here. And they were looking for somebody who can do some stuff. And I learned how to do some 3D modeling on a feature film. And then from there, I realized I should manage people doing this, not doing it physically. But I still was doing a lot of it. But I kind of got more into the aspect of the concept of the design side, but also the management side, and also just the philosophy of how things were done. So that was kind of the important part for me to understand. Taking
a step back a little bit, what was the process of you finding DreamWorks or DreamWorks finding you? How did that all happen?
So when I was in college, I found a company locally here in Utah, and they were looking for a kind of a project management design 3D guy. So I came in, I met with them, and as I started doing a bunch of work with these guys, DreamWorks came to them and said, hey, we have a feature film called Ants, and we need somebody who understands 3D. We need to understand somebody who can actually manage people across country, and I was the guy.
Wow.
So that was kind of my first endeavor working with DreamWorks. And then after that movie was done, DreamWorks decided to come in and offer me a job to be the light effects supervisor for Shrek. So I spent 5 years at DreamWorks doing that. And then following that, as soon as that movie was done, transitioned me over to the marketing department. They said, since you understand the design, the look, the feel of everything, help us do the movie posters and the promotional ads. And then I did that. And then I decided to leave that company.
I'm learning more in this interview than y'all probably are. This is awesome. So I did not know Ants was the first movie.
Ants was the first animated movie for me. My first movie, Total Recall.
Okay.
That was actually my first full feature movie that I became a project manager for.
Okay.
Which was kind of cool.
So during your time at DreamWorks, you mentioned the word management, and I remember we had a conversation at one point about you were over a fairly large team at DreamWorks.
I was.
Tell us about that experience, and then what was it like having to manage a lot of creatives?
Oh, that's an interesting one. When I was at DreamWorks, I got to manage almost over 200 people for the feature film Shrek. And then from there, I transitioned, as soon as the movie was done, I moved into their cafe division, which is kind of their TV effects, film effects side. So we had about 75 people over in that department, dealing with multiple people. I would say artists, ranging from all cultures, all nationalities to, different, lifestyles of how people live. was challenging. But the one thing that I did realize as kind of a manager of creative is, you treat them with respect. They also like to know that you have some experience in doing this. So I think there was a mutual respect in that part. But I think it's really understanding the artists themselves. And I got to know every single artist really quick, even though it was over 200 people. But that was my job was if I knew their name, they knew mine, they knew I cared. And I think it's also the process when you're in the creative world is the creative people sometimes feel like they're not being seen or heard. And that was my job. My job was to make sure they were seen, they were heard from top management, from Jeffrey Katzenberg, who was my boss, that we saw every week, to him ripping apart people. All right. My job was to diffuse that after the fact.
Nice.
But as time progressed and as I kind of evolved into the company more, I realized I can stop that from happening right from the beginning. And that was the way that I showed my team that I've got their back. And so really it's a lot of times when you start working with artists, the thing that you realize is they may be going down the wrong path, but you can't say, oh, that's terrible, that's horrible, that stinks, that's the worst thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
You have to say, that's an interesting thought.
Yeah.
Tell me about it. Why'd you go there? Why'd you do that? Have you ever thought about this? So really it kind of gets them into the mode of thinking a little bit more rather than them realizing that we really don't like what you're doing, but there's a way of going around it without kind of destroying the creativity and the flow. Because if not, a lot of times artists are sitting in your office for a few days, trying to recover from the disappointment that people have.
It's an interesting. I brought this up before with our brand team, and you'll sympathize with this. But picture yourself back in elementary school. It's always far more daunting when you had to stand in front of the class and show your painting. And as opposed to stand in front of the class and you're wrong with the math equation. Something's objective, something's subjective, but we've always felt like, and I've always felt like when you're creative, you have to put part of yourself into that project.
Absolutely.
And so when a boss tears it apart or a client is tearing it apart, it takes time to emotionally recover from that.
It does. And if there's a way to kind of stop that from happening, that just kind of creates that more of a bond between the artist and the manager, we'll say, at this point. And so I kind of look for the strengths of people, but I really look for the weaknesses on how we can improve that. Yeah. And I think a lot of that is just communication.
Okay.
That's a key part is communicating with artists is always fun. Sometimes it's challenging, but I'm an artist too, but I also have the business side of things where a lot of artists are just artists. Yeah. And they don't want to do anything but art. For me, I like to do both. I prefer the managing of the people more than I do the artwork, to be honest. Yeah. Because you get to see the success of people.
I like that.
And our job is to make sure I'm successful in what they do.
I think the word creative gets thrown around a lot. You've used the word artist. You've also, I think it's been interesting how much you talk about people when you're talking about being creative. I think that's so important. Your EQ has to be high, I think, if you're managing creatives. But what does being creative mean to you? And how would you identify creativity in the people that you managed or hired?
I think everybody has their own creative world. And the way you dance, the way you talk, the way you walk, the way you dress, it's all creative. You're creating your own vibe. And I think for me, what I consider creative is somebody who can kind of step outside of the box a little bit and don't just take the easy route, take the complicated route and try to bring them together. It's easy to draw something. It's easy to create colors. It's easy to create a website or a video, but it's really taking that and creating the art of it. That's creative to me. And the art could be, the content. That's being presented. That's art. That's creative. That's design. So I think there's so many different areas when you look at creative. Just being a manager is creative. You're creating, an easier environment. You're creating a different scenario to get them out of. I think that's the part that is, everybody has creativity. It's just how do you use it?
I think that's something I've already recognized in your first week here at Big Red Jelly.
It's only been a week.
Steven's been on a couple client calls, and one thing I've really appreciated with how you manage those relationships is the client will come with an objective of a goal. I need to do this. Or they don't. They come and say, I need to do a piece of content. I need to create this piece of content. And I've already heard conversations or overheard conversations where you kind of took a step outside the box, as you explained, and said, well, what are we trying to achieve here? Maybe we should use this photographer and go do that photo shoot for Ready Store, right? Maybe we should do a press release for this client over here. And that's important. That's what clients are looking for. They might come in with, hey, here's what we got to do. Here's what we have to do.
Right.
And I really appreciate the way that you kind of pause them and say, well, why are we doing that?
Right.
And then they explain.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's important because when someone comes to Big Red Jelly, they look at, the vast projects that you've done, the process in which they're being implemented. But I also think that there's areas where sometimes they just think, I'm just here for a website, or I'm here for brand. But there's a way that you can actually, we had a good call today with another client that, they've got these big presentations that they're going to go to. We asked the question, well, what are you doing in those presentations? Oh, we're spending a lot of money and we're coming there and spending $50,000 for coming in. It's like, well, that's great. Yeah. Are you presenting? Well, yes. Well, why not create a little 90-second, sizzle that says, this is who I am. And then that leads you into your conversation. Yeah. Oh, I didn't even think about that. Yeah. Same thing. It's like, creating a promotional reel for somebody, because a lot of times projects are kind of hard to explain in word. People want to actually see it. Yeah. And so, those type of things, we're living in a visual world. Yeah. And a lot of times people want to have things explained to them and they catch it a lot easier.
I love it. Last question from me. Okay. What inspires you? What keeps you going when you're in your creative field? When you're feeling burnout, how do you get back on the horse?
I think it's, I'm one of those, I like to see other successes. Other people succeed makes me happy. For me, I've been doing this for a long time. As you've mentioned, decades, which maybe I am the old guy, but it is what it is. Yeah. But it's one of those things that
you're the mature guy. You're the wise guy.
Yeah, I'm seasoned. I'm the seasoned. I'm the seasoned silverback.
There you go.
But one of the things that the excitement part for me is seeing others succeed. And when it can be the simplest thing that, the client loved my logo, or the client, thought the structure was great, that's a success. Yeah. And those are the things, those are milestones that you increase on. You get people to realize that may not seem big to you, but it really was. Yeah. Because you're just kind of used to hearing it. But I think it's just acknowledging those successes that somebody's done is a big part.
I love it. Stephen, we are excited for you to be here.
I'm very excited.
I'm excited to see what Stephen does.
Me too.
And, going back to what motivates Stephen, our first core value here at Big Red Jelly is client success first, always. And I'd say the same thing. A creative field is a tough field to be in.
It is.
I think there's a lot of smoke and mirrors out there. There's a lot of fluff. But when you see an actual client project come to fruition and you see the results that can bring for a business, and then in turn a person and their family and their friends, that drives all of us here. And I'm really excited for you to kind of implement your expertise and take us to the next level.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited.
Okay. Thanks, Stephen. And thanks everyone for joining us.
Thanks, guys.